Welcome back to Web Cafe AI, where we do daily ChatGPT and AI videos for your personal and business life. And in today's video is going to be quite a special one. I want to do a full-blown mini course where I essentially show you everything that's entailed with starting with AI automation, understanding Zapier as a platform, and understanding how to integrate that with OpenAI. If you've been a watcher of this channel, then this video may be more on the simple side, but if you're brand new, welcome to Web Cafe AI. Here we do a lot of videos when it comes to AI automation and how to leverage that in different parts of your life or in different parts of your business. So this video right here is going to be a full-blown mini course where essentially I show you from start to finish everything that's entailed with the Zapier platform, everything that's entailed with the OpenAI platform, how they complement each other, and you'll get a fully understanding of how to use AI automation in whatever specific use case you have. Finally, if you like this kind of content that is more longer form, mini course oriented, let me know by just simply liking the video. It's free and it helps us here at Web Cafe AI. Okay, let's go ahead and start off here. So phase one is we're going to have to create our accounts. To do that, you're simply going to click the two links that I have in the description below, and we're going to start with Zapier. All you need to do is start for free with Google or start with an email, and then if we go over to pricing, as you see, they'll have a tier that is completely free, and you only have to have up to 100 tasks a month. This is a great starting point for anyone new to automation, as it's going to allow you to play around a little bit with understanding the different stuff entailed with, Zapier flows and Zaps in general. The next link I have in the description below is going to be OpenAI, and this is going to essentially allow you to integrate AI in all your Zapier flows. So all you need to do is come up to the sign up button right here and sign up with an account. And once you create your account, you'll get access to a dashboard that will allow you to see billing usage and your API keys that we'll integrate later in this tutorial. Now, your next question might be, hey, Corbin, well, this is great. It sounds like it's free, but what are the costs associated if I wanted to kind of scale or use more tasks here? Essentially, how Zapier works is it's going to be on task basis. The idea behind a task is, let's say you're running a flow. This will make more sense as we dive further into this tutorial, but just for now, so you get a general gist right off the bat. Let's say you have a flow that has 5 different blocks. Those 5 different blocks would equate to 5 tasks once the flow has been run once. So in this context, as you see here, for $20 a month, you'll get access to 750 tasks. If we move over to OpenAI's price structuring is a little different. So there is no initial fixed fee every single month. They aren't going to charge you $10 a month. They aren't going to charge you $20 a month no matter what. Their way of charging for their service essentially is based off usage. So if you only use AI from their GPT-4 or GPT-3 like once or twice, you're only going to be paying 1 or 2 pennies the entire month. So their structure and their context is purely based off usage rather than fixed fee subscription. So that is good to know as we build out these models and these flows in Zapier, because maybe we want to use GPT 3.5 because it's cheaper than using GPT-4 and these different models. To clarify on that point, as you see here, in order for 1,000 tokens of usage for GPT-4, it's going to cost you around 3 pennies. 1,000 tokens of usage of GPT 3.5 is 0.02 pennies. Now, right now you might be saying, Corbin, I don't even know what the heck a token is. Don't worry about that. In this tutorial, you'll see how to not only calculate that, but also monitor that and really understand what each prompt does and how many tokens are typically associated with every single output that you have in any type of flow that you build out in Zapier and OpenAI. Okay, so you have officially now signed up, created your Zapier account. You've signed up, created your OpenAI account. The next stage here is let's understand both of these interfaces so that you can know how to leverage and really understand how to walk through each platform and you don't necessarily get lost when trying to find something useful. So your homepage might look a little different than mine. I'm currently enrolled in their beta program where they'll just give me new tools and new features in order to beta test with them and give them feedback. For example, this Create a Zap tool, which we did a video on this channel. So if you're interested in that, go and check that out. But for now, all your homepage really will have essentially is going to be your recent Zaps that you worked on and recommended for you. So different Zaps that are pre-built in the community. And then, all these little footer options, you don't necessarily have to care about those. For now, that is all you have to really care about when it comes to the front-facing dashboard on Zapier. If you take your cursor and you come over here, you'll be able to see all these different options here, starting with Zaps. In order to minimize or maximize this sidebar, all you need to do is come up to here and say open sidebar, and now it's maximized. If you want to minimize it, you just hit close sidebar. All right, so now that we're in the area of where our Zaps are located, there is a couple stuff we want to learn here. First off, you can search a Zap by name right here. Second off, what I like to do is organize Zaps based off the context that they're being used. So for example, all the Zaps that I've created for this YouTube account, and I have shared in every single description of those videos, I store in this specific folder. So I know it's designated that, hey, these are, YouTube zaps that I've shared. And essentially I don't necessarily want these being deleted because I want you guys to have access to them. In order to create a folder, all you need to do is come over here to this plus sign, and I could just type in test here. And then as you see here, it will create that little folder there. And with these 3 ellipses, that's a lot of the navigation. So I can move a folder into a folder. I can rename that folder. I can create a new folder within that folder. So folder 2. And then you see right there, new folder within the folder. And then I can finally delete it only if the folders within that folder are deleted. That is a mouthful. So let me go ahead and delete these real quick because I don't necessarily need them right now. Now, the next cool feature here is that if you go from private folders to shared folders, let's say you have multiple members, this is essentially where you'd want to put the folders here. And this essentially allows you to share folders with other individuals on your team. So you can both be working on a Zap and you can kind of collaborate more in that context. Now, don't mind the names right there. This is just where I beta test a lot of different Zap ideas that I think of, and I just leave it in the home folder. From here, though, you have a really good idea of the navigation on the Zap panel. The last thing you'd want to understand is this little button right here. If you click this, it'll select all Zaps associated. So if I go to YouTube Zaps real quick, I can go ahead and mass click this, and then I could go ahead and say move to folder, delete, clear selection, or select and pause all of them at a single time. Now let's go ahead and just create a Zap. We're not gonna do anything crazy here because we still need to do a lot more backdrop of this platform in general, but I wanna show you essentially how you create a Zap. In order to do so, you're gonna come over here to create, not new folder, we're gonna say create a new Zap. And then once you're in a new Zap here, you'll be able to start off essentially by adding that trigger that you'd want, which could be any of this stuff. Obviously, when we get deeper into this tutorial, I plan on telling you a lot more about what we can do on this platform when it comes to this part of it. But that essentially is how you create a Zap on the surface level. So the next little tab that you see in your sidebar is transfers. This shouldn't be too important to you if you're brand new to the platform. You'll rarely need to use this. Essentially, the point of it though is to send data in bulk from one app to another. This is useful for importing records or completing a batch process. This isn't too fundamental on the early stages of understanding AI automation, so we're not gonna go too deep into here. The next thing you may see on your sidebar, depending on Zapier, if Zapier released it or not yet, is gonna be tables. Essentially, tables is their way, think of it like a Google Excel sheet or Google Sheets within your Zapier account. But what's great about that is that now with tables, you can essentially it's a level up of a Google Sheets because now we can add automations within each little cell. We can do different flows within the actual tables themselves. This might be a little confusing. We do a whole tutorial on that on a separate video, but just a quick overview for that. Now, the next little tab here is going to be interfaces. Think of interfaces as a separate web page builder. The context you'd use interfaces is either for internal team use, such as building out like CRMs that are internally used to drag to different flows, or using it for landing pages and so on for your business. This is where you're going to essentially connect all the different apps that you want to when you want to use different flows. So for example, if you want to connect your Instagram, you'd connect it here. If you want to connect your Gmail, you would just simply type in the name of the app and you will be able to integrate it. So now we'd be able to access it and, either do actions or triggers with it. So the next section we have here is Zap history. This is going to give you an idea of where your Zaps are going and how they're being used. And for example, we can see Zap runs here, and this is going to give you a chronological idea of what is the most recent Zap that was running your account. So this context would be the IG to Pinterest. And then you come over here to task usage, and you can kind of understand, okay, well, this day we did 61 tasks worth of Zaps, and then you can kind of get an overall summary at the top here. So you can understand what a Zap is. Let's go ahead and jump into one of these. So we're just going to go to the IG Pinterest, which essentially is when a Instagram post is posted, it will essentially push a Pinterest post with that exact same post and then use GPT in order to make the contents of that post. And then as you see here, you'll get at the top here how many tasks were used. So in this context, 3. Why were 3 tasks used? It's because we have 3 blocks post trigger. 1, 2, 3. That is basically how they associate cost with everything. So that means if you have a 70 block automation flow, and just so you know, when I say blocks, I mean just any type of, this is a block, doesn't matter what the program is, that's just what I refer to as a block. If you have 70 blocks and one trigger to trigger all 70 of those blocks, that's going to cost you 70 Zaps or 70 tasks every single time that automation runs, if that makes sense. This leads me to the next thing, which shows how many tasks have been burned so far in your 30-day billing cycle. So for me, since it just started, only 99 have been burned. And then right here, you're going to get the limits of how many zaps you can have on your account. I believe when you first start, it's a max of either 10 or 20. So you'll see that here. For me, it's unlimited because we're on a pro plan. But for now, that's what you need to understand about your plan. If you want to manage it, all you have to do is click this, and you can either go to a higher tier or a lower tier depending on the context you're dealing with. Okay, so the next section here is Explore. So Explore essentially allows you to kind of access the community of different Zapier people and essentially the different flows that they have publicly made available. So maybe you have a specific app like Twitter and you really need to understand better ways you can use automation with it. All you would need to do essentially would be clicking Twitter here, and then you'd click one other app. So maybe we do Twitter and Gmail, and let's go ahead and see if it can run it. As you see down there, it shows you different Zap templates that are associated with the apps you clicked. So here's a Twitter one, here's a Gmail one, and so on. This is a good place to go if you need to get an idea of something to do on your personal account. If you want to achieve a task with a certain app that maybe you can't find a lot of tutorials on. Although, as you know, here at WebCafe AI, you're going to be able to find a ton of different tutorials for preset templates when it comes to integrating AI with it. And your final tab here is going to be the Get Help tab. As the name says, if you have any issues, you can obviously contact Zapier's customer service. They have a great customer service. They respond in time and really try to walk through and help you out when it comes to different issues you may face. Also, they have a community board, so maybe you can even post your question on a community board that people within the community can help you answer. Okay, so now you have a general idea of the Zapier platform, what's associated with it, and how to approach it. Let's go ahead and learn about the OpenAI platform, which is going to be the AI in all of our different automations we do here. Once you log into your OpenAI account, you're going to be prompted with this kind of dashboard. You'll have 3 different sections here. You have Start with Basics, Build an Application, and Build a ChatGPT plugin. For the purposes of what we're trying to achieve here, which is simply having Zapier and OpenAI work hand in hand, these aren't too important, as Build an Application is more developer based, where you're calling APIs in order to integrate it to different stuff. And then obviously Build a ChatGPT plugin, that is much more developer based, where essentially, if you're familiar with my other videos on this channel where we go over plugins, it'd be building out a plugin for the ChatGPT platform. Therefore, a lot of these tabs you don't really need to care about in the context of what we're dealing with OpenAI. So for example, Playground is just a tool you can use to try different models and see what the output would be in certain context, but you can still do that in Zapier once we integrate it, so that's not too important. Examples may be interesting to you if you kind of want to see some examples of prompt structuring, such as converting movie titles into emojis. Right here, convert movie titles into emojis, Back to the Future, and so on. So as you see, the prompt right here is convert movie titles into emojis, and then essentially it gives out that output. You can even copy it here. This is not too important stuff when it comes to our certain context, but if you want to look at certain prompt structuring, this could be important there. API reference, don't have to worry about this because all we need for our context will just be the API key provided by OpenAI. Finally, documentation, more developer stuff, not important for what we're trying to achieve here, which is just purely AI automation with Zapier. So that is a brief overview of that part of the platform, which is not too important to you. What's important to you, though, is going to be coming up to your name right here, and we're going to go to Manage Account. This is where you're going to find your organization name and your organization ID that's hidden under me, and that could be important in certain contexts where it requests and wants your organization ID. You're going to find it right above me on your settings. The next tab of usage is going to show you a breakdown day by day, how much cost has been associated with the amount of AI you've used. As you see here, the bars fluctuate. You'll be able to see a cumulative of this as well. And then on top of that, one thing I want to point out that is very important is this next little tab over here, which is rate limits. Essentially, any new account has a rate limit of 250 USD, which in most contexts, you don't have to worry about. But if you notice yourself using a lot of AI because you're using it in a lot of different functions like we do here at WebCafe AI, you're going to have to make sure you request a higher rate usage. This is a lengthy process. So if you know you're going to be using AI a lot, I implore you to essentially ask for a higher rate usage, give your reasoning, and then, wait a couple of days to see what the response is. But this will make sure that you don't, truncate yourself if the issue arises where you need to get AI, but now you've hit your cap of 250 USD a month and it doesn't let you, charge their model anymore. Right, so probably the most important part and what you have to care about when it comes to AI automation and Zapier is going to be the API keys. So essentially I went here from coming up to your profile. You can either hit view API keys or manage your account. Either one you're going to find in the side section here, and all you have to do is press API key. Once you press API key, the next step essentially would be generating a API key. And let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to hit create new secret key. We're going to go ahead and name that secret key to test. Don't worry, you're gonna see it, but I'm deleting it after this tutorial, so don't try to use it on YouTube. All right, so we're gonna hit test here, create this secret key, and then I'm gonna go ahead and copy it. To clarify real quick, an API key is what gives you access to OpenAI's backend, to ChatGPT and the different models, but also an API key is where OpenAI realizes like, okay, this API key was used X amount of times, let's charge them this much. So it's kind of like, you know, purely to you. Don't ever share your API key, because if you share it and someone else gets a hold of it, and they could charge your key out the wazoo and without you even knowing. But we have our API key now. So all we have to do is come to My Apps, and we're gonna go ahead and integrate it with two different things here. So the first one is gonna be OpenAI. And you're saying, okay, why are we doing it OpenAI and ChatGPT? Why don't we just do one or the other? Because OpenAI is what's going to give us access to the ability for image generation and using Whisper, which is text to voice. So maybe in some context, you want to develop an SRT file. Might want a little faster, but essentially just hit add new connection. And then that API key that you just copied, paste here. You say yes and continue. And then I'm going to go ahead and rename this as test account, because I'm deleting it. So don't try to steal it. Test account. And then as you see here, you can go ahead and click this. You can test connection, you can reconnect, and so on. If you hit test connection, it's just gonna be like, is it confirmation? Is there a connection? So we can go ahead and do that right now. Testing, test successful. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna go ahead and make one other connection here. We're gonna go up here, we're gonna go to ChatGPT. So why are we getting ChatGPT is because this is gonna be the main one you wanna use when you have any type of context where you need to use the language model and not necessarily the image generation model. So we're gonna hit add new connection. And we're gonna go ahead and use the same key here. Say yes, continue. And then we can go ahead and rename this as test GPT. All right, perfect. So we have officially connected AI with Zapier. Now we can create AI automated zaps. Really cool stuff here. So the next part of this tutorial is I'm going to show you some examples of zaps that have AI integrated with it. I'm also going to show you how to understand these zaps when they execute, such as token usage, such as timing, such as, you know, block usage, and so on. So this next part of the tutorial is really going to show you how to operate when dealing with AI in Zapier. So let's go ahead and begin by creating a zap. As we showed earlier in this tutorial, we're going here and we're just going to go ahead and just do testing AI. And let's go ahead and just learn a couple stuff here. I'm going to delete that real quick. The first thing you want to learn here is that OpenAI and ChatGPT don't have triggers. Reason is because what necessarily is going to trigger ChatGPT and OpenAI to incur? These are more of tasks or actions, because of the fact that a lot of the times ChatGPT or OpenAI are manipulating data that has been already generated before in the flow. So just so you understand the idea behind a trigger, let's go ahead and make a very simple one. Your trigger can either be a third-party app that you integrated or one of Zapier's built-in tools. As you see here, if we come over here, Zapier has a ton of built-in tools and actually are very useful in certain contexts, such as the formatter tool. If I can find it, this one right here, for the context of maybe you need to format the output of the AI generated text and so on. So, you know, understanding how to use Zapier's, you know, basic tools really helps you to leverage your ability to build out very complex zaps. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to start with a very simple one, which is going to be schedule. And obviously, as the name says, a schedule or zap essentially will, every single time the event occurs, it will trigger. So in this context, it'd be either every day, every hour, every month, or every week. So let's just say every day, this will trigger whatever is about to occur after. Every day at, we'll say at noon. If I can click this. And we hit test trigger. This will obviously work. Essentially, a trigger will then occur. So every day at noon, this will basically incur a trigger to the action blocks. Now that we have made our trigger of every day, let's go ahead and play around with the OpenAI block and the ChatGPT block and understand it better. Starting with the OpenAI block. So we're gonna hit OpenAI. We're gonna choose an event. So we have a couple of events here. So the first one being check moderation. Essentially in this context, we could have text come in. So maybe an email's coming in, maybe a YouTube comments coming in, and it wants to check moderation for like essentially, as you see here, hate, threatening, self-harm, violence, and so on. Create a transcript. This is interesting. So this uses Whisper's API to create a transcript, create a translation, generate an image, send a prompt, API request. So in this context, if you know how to integrate API that maybe isn't necessarily natively integrated to Zapier. So what I mean by that is, if you know how it says like Zapier has 5,000 plus apps, there's still more than that, right? So then maybe the 5,003rd one is the one that doesn't natively integrate with Zapier, so you have to make a custom call for that, which we'll get into later in another tutorial. But then you can also search embeddings for specific things. Some of this stuff, I encourage you to use the ChatGPT block, not the OpenAI block. I encourage you to use the OpenAI block in the context of creating transcripts, creating translations, and generating images. Everything else that has been outlined here, and obviously the API, either one, everything else that's been outlined here, we're going to be able to use the ChatGPT block for. But in this context, we're going to go ahead and choose generate an image. And essentially this uses DALL-E's backend. And as you see here, we'll choose the connection we made earlier. For us, it's just test connect. We're going to go ahead and hit continue here. Now for the prompt here, you're going to do traditionally what you would do for a prompt. If you're not familiar with DALL-E prompts and all that, essentially it's a AI generated text to image software. So for our context, we'll just say a dog at a beach. Obviously this can get a lot more, advanced, but for the purposes of the tutorial, we're just going to do a dog at a beach. And then it asks for the number of variations of an image. Typically you'll only say one, you could say 10, and then 10 different variations of a dog at a beach will be generated. And then finally, it's going to ask for a size. We'll do 1024 by 1024. We continue, test that action. And then as you see here, you'll get a nice little output. With the output, we can manipulate and use that data. So let's go ahead and see the output real quick. The output is a URL. Just so you know, this URL will expire within 30 minutes to an hour. So if you have flows that maybe will call upon this URL like a day or 2 days later, it will have an error where essentially it'll be like, we can't find a URL. Essentially that means that this DALL-E image has been generated. This link is only live for like 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like. All right, so I opened a new tab and then just pasted that link there. And as you see here, we got our AI generated image. Congratulations, if you're following along, you've just done your first AI automated task, which was every day on 12 p.m. generate a dog running on a beach. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so now that we kind of understand the function of generating an image using DALL-E, we can go ahead and try another function that we could use with OpenAI here, which would be create a transcript. So we're going to continue here. And then essentially the way that this works is that for the file, it says MP3, MP4, MPEG, M4A. I highly recommend don't use a video file for this because it's just going to be too large. Use an audio file. It's a lot faster when it comes to processing it. And then you might be asking yourself, okay, well, if you're just giving me a transcript, what is the purpose of a prompt function here? The way you kind of look at the prompt function is that if you're familiar with creating transcripts from videos in the past or audio in the past, an issue that always occurs is that some words that are said or written down or outputted wrong every single time. So a context for me is that when I've done transcripts in the past for videos like this, ChatGPT comes out to like ChatGDT, like spelled completely wrong. What I can do then is essentially say, every time you hear ChatGPT, spell it as quotation marks. I'm going to do ChatGPT. And really surprising, this actually understands that. So if there's certain nuisances when you create transcripts that you are aware of, this is a great tool to use in the sense of making sure that every single transcript that comes out is highly accurate. And as we know, it's a language model, so you'll be able to talk to it like a human, structure it like this, and then essentially, you can even ask, you can even like list more. So if I had another word like dog that was spelled wrong, do dog and stuff like that. The next thing that you could do here is the response format. So you see text, SRT, web VTT, JSON, verbose JSON. Typically you use the SRT, and then the language of the audio, you're going to want to use this kind of character, and they even give you a whole list of the other formatted, like EN for English, ES for Spanish, and so on. Now, the next thing you can do with OpenAI that's powerful is creating a translation. So this is the same idea here. Essentially, you could put in the file as an audio, make sure it's audio, even though it suggests video, or you can do video, do audio. Enter a prompt, like I said before. If there's certain things that you want to make very specific, and then the response format we can have as, SRT. And then essentially for the prompt, let's say in this context, it's just a translation of the audio file. Please, I'm gonna go ahead and say, please generate in Spanish and make sure these Spanish words are spelled like, and then semicolon, and then you just put in parentheses the Spanish words that you'd want spelled correctly that you may have had issues with in the past. So when it goes from English to Spanish, it's a pretty fine-tuned transcript. Okay, so now let's get to the ChatGPT blog. Before I continue, if you felt like you learned something up to this point, make sure to like the video. It's completely free and it helps us out here at Web Cafe AI. But now we're gonna get to the very fun part of what I think AI automation has. Obviously, DALL-E and Whisper has its role, but that's very niche and specific roles. But the best part of this integration is the fact that we can access ChatGPT. Okay, to begin, we only have one type of event currently, which is gonna be conversation. We're gonna continue here, and we're gonna choose the account we just created, which was test GPT. And one thing I want to point out before I continue here is that you can rename these little blocks. So if I hit this and just said GPT test, you can do it like that. That might help you when structuring your flows. But from here, we have a couple of input boxes. So let's understand each one and what it means for you. Okay, so the first one, user message. Think of that as when you're using, regular ChatGPT with the nice little UI chatbot. That's the prompt you essentially input. This is where you're going to essentially tell ChatGPT what do you want it to do. And what's great about Zapier is that now we have access to data that's been previously set. So for example, for some reason, if you want to put Tuesday in the prompt, and obviously it's a variable, so if this was sent off at Wednesday, that would turn into a Wednesday. You can do that now. And that's what makes this whole function super powerful, is now we can generate or create prompts that have variables within it, so that every single output that is generated is going to be different and very specific depending on the data that happens previous to it. Now, the next thing that occurs here is going to be the user name here, which is going to be essentially you as an individual, and then the assistant name. What I like to do is typically is keep these as the default of user and assistant. There isn't a lot of context here where you would need to essentially change the assistant name or the username. The purposes I could see in some context is that if you wanted to do an assistant name of like bot1 and then bot2 as the next ChatGPT block, maybe you want to separate the blocks for your own organizational benefit. But for now, there isn't a lot of use case or reasoning of why you'd want to change the assistant name or the username. Now, the assistant instructions, this could come into play a little bit. I kind of see this as more of adding a cherry on top of a sundae. It isn't the whole sundae. The whole sundae is going to be really your user message. The cherry on top, though, is that let's say in some context you really want to build out a model of an SEO article generator. In this area for assistant instructions, you could say you are a SEO blog writer. All this does really is it fine-tunes ChatGPT a little bit further than your original user message. So it really kind of lasers down on like, hey, you aren't just a helpful messenger trying to make me an SEO article. You're a SEO blog writer trying to make me that article that I'm trying to get, right? Idea here essentially is that in some context, the output is better than if you didn't give an assistant instruction. And then I'll be honest with you, in some context, it's actually worse than if you were just to leave that as a helpful assistant. So go ahead and test with that. Don't be too hard stuck on making sure that this is going to be changed every single time. The next block here that we have is going to be your model, and you can choose between GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. And as I said earlier in the tutorial, GPT 3.5 is a lot cheaper than GPT 4. But GPT 3.5, look at that more as a model that's used for grunt-oriented tasks. And what do I mean by grunt-oriented? I mean in the context of summarize this GPT, format this GPT, translate this GPT, that kind of context. Not necessarily in the context of like, hey, GPT, write me an article. Hey, GPT, write me an email subject line with an email body with XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. If you want more content-oriented type of outputs, you want to use GPT-4. You can use GPT 3.5. It'll be fine. It'll be able to function. Maybe you got to make your user message a little bit more intricate. Like, it's still possible. But if you want the best type of output, the most high quality type of output, you're going to want to use GPT-4. Okay, so then the next section we have here is temperature and top P. In most contexts, you're going to keep this as default, but as you see here, a higher value will locate or reveal a more random outputs, while a lower value will have a more consistent output. Honestly, keep this at 1, as you're going to learn how to make it consistent every single time and exactly how you want it every single time with this last little block here, which is a memory key. For top P, it essentially does the exact same thing, but in the context of probability, using pre-context data that it has. It's going to be like, well, based off the last 3 months of how we typically would output it, this is how the user would typically like it. That kind of thought and reasoning, as you see here. So a 0.1 means only the tokens comprising of the top 10% probability are considered. So in that context, you're dealing with you're limiting the amount of output possibilities if you have it at a lower top P. So I suggest keeping that at 1 as well. Finally, and probably the coolest thing that's been added, and why I really suggest ChatGPT block natively rather than the OpenAI send prompt, is the memory key. For the purposes of this tutorial, let's just show you what a memory key is live. So a memory key is this, essentially. Explained a memory key, I think it's best I just show you from the chatbot side. In order to do so, all you need to do is this. We're gonna say generate 5 captions for a company that sells dog products. Enter. Perfect. And then let's fine tune a little bit more, and let's say each caption have a emoji. Okay, great. So you might be asking yourself, how does this have any correlation? The idea here is this. What was the first caption you generated? And there you go. Unleash the joy, elevate your furry friend's happiness with our premium dog products. Unleash the joy, same caption. Why that's important is basically when you set up a memory key on Zapier's end, you're essentially creating a small little brain or a little database for it to understand what was said previously in the chat. This can be very powerful in a lot of context, such as you set up a AI automated article generator, but you don't want the articles to repeat or use the same content. Well, guess what? Now with a memory key, you're able to achieve this, because every single one or every single memory key that you identify is a chat on its own. Knowing this, I could set up a memory key to like cap 10, and that will then set up a chat on their back end that essentially everything that's been generated, every time this flow is ran, it will know what was outputted and what was said previously, and you can actually take that into account when writing out your prompt up here. One thing I want to point out is that this is going to be 32 random characters. Don't use special characters, and then essentially that's what creates a memory key. It could be anything. It could be this, anything you want. If you want to make it so it's easy for you to remember, maybe the intention or the purpose of this block is social caption, so you do social cap 01 and go from there. One other thing I want to point out here real quick is that when you're choosing between the models and you see GPT 3.5 Turbo 0301, 0314, that represents March 14th and this represents March 1st. Don't ever use these models as you know, GPT continues to update and increase. They're going to slowly discontinue those. So if you build out a ton of AI automation on the back of these two, you're going to have to reset it, because now you're going to have to choose the ones that are consistent and universal, which are the ones that are just simply named GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 Turbo. Now that you understand all the different input values on a ChatGPT block, let's just do some real quick format lessons so you can really understand, okay, well, how do I talk to it? What's the best way to talk to it? What's the best way to approach it when generating a prompt? So there's going to be a couple things here. One thing you could do here is do a context block. You're going to do a context, then you do parentheses. This is typically how you format, or how we format at WebCafe AI when we're dealing with variables and so on. Context block, think of this as you're giving context essentially to the bot of what its purpose is and what it's about to do. So maybe the context is you are a social, or you are a customer support agent for Web Cafe AI. And now it understands that whatever you ask it to do, so the next step may be generate an email template for a customer. Now it understands that, okay, when I generate this email template for a customer, the context is I'm a customer support agent for Web Cafe AI, so it'll entail that and put that more into its output. Let's do another type of block here, which is going to be a parameter block. Parameter block identify limitations and ways you want to structure your output. So for example, parameter could be max use 2 sentences. That's an example of a parameter. Another parameter could be max use 2 sentences and make sure to include the words XYZ and so on. Think of parameter as a way for you to really structure the output and fine tune the output a little bit better. Another block you could do here is going to be a format block. So maybe in some context, you need to format the output into HTML. So have the output in HTML. So for example, an email, we want that. So for this example, we're going to go ahead and say have the output HTML, bold, important parts. And then I'm going to go ahead and increase the model to GPT-4. Okay, so as you see here, we got the formatted email template in HTML. One thing that may be annoying right off the bat is the fact that it says, sure, here's an email template, and then, gives the generation. In the context that maybe you don't want text before it, what I like to do is say generate an email template for a customer, no text before or after, and then this allows GPT to understand, okay, when I output it, I don't need to give some type of pretext or context of essentially what I'm generating. Now that you have a really good understanding of the GPT block and the OpenAI block, there is going to be one little trick here I want to show, and then we're going to dive into understanding what it looks like when you start executing these at scale and understanding the back end of it. Trick I want to show you real quick is understanding how to use other tools in Zapier to manipulate the GPT data. So in this context, we're going to go ahead and use a formatter tool. And what this is going to allow us to do is manipulate the text. We can go ahead and choose text is the event. We're going to hit continue here. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and hit transform, and we're going to hit replace. And the input data that we're going to use is the GPT output. And we're going to go ahead and click that. So for this context, if you ever want to replace a certain character, so a lot of times what GPT does is it has quotation marks in its outputs, which can be very annoying. But just for the sake of this tutorial and for the purpose of showing you how it works, let's just say I want to get rid of this little piece right here, this special character. All I would need to do is put the input in, say find that specific character, replace it with empty space, and then as you see here, this new output, it will have none of those. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Perfect. So as you see here, all of them have been deleted and gone. Use that as you will, but this is just one small example of how to use a formatter tool to format the underlying data that you're getting. One other thing that I forgot to mention I want to show you, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but not really, was the fact that the prompts are fixed text, but probably the most important part of what makes a prompt good when it comes to AI automation is understanding how to use variables in the prompts. So for example, let's say, generate an email template for a customer. Let's say we have the customer's data. We can do customer, semicolon, we can put name, location, and we can put product or service wanted. Each one of these are going to do a semicolon, and we're going to put a parentheses. And then assuming, let's say we had a landing page or landing form and we had this information previously given. So maybe every time a Google form is submitted and it provides all that information, you would just jump into it like this and you would simply find the specific data. So let's just assume that the name is Tuesday. Let's assume the location in that form was, the time. And let's assume that the service in that form was like right here. So essentially these are live data feeds that will be inputted based off the initial trigger. Obviously in this context, I can't show it because I don't have an initial trigger of a Google form there. I just have a scheduler. But if you're interested in learning more about that kind of stuff and really using AI automation to the next level, make sure to check out our other videos here as we dive deep into a bunch of different use cases when understanding how to prompt structure, including variables. Okay, so before we jump into understanding cost and usage, one thing I want to show you real quick is how to share a Zap. In some contexts, you may want to share Zaps in the future. So I'm going to share this Zap in the description below. But all you would need to do is come over here to these 3 ellipses, and we're going to go ahead and hit share template. And then we get a little load screen here. and it looks like it can't share it because we actually have to make sure everything within that template is been tested or skip tested to make sure it's been confirmed. So in this context, as you see here, it doesn't like it because I provided no information for this underlying event. So I'm just going to go ahead and generate a prompt again. All right, so I went ahead and just real quickly made the prompt again. I'm going to skip the test just to show you don't have to generate every single time. And as you see here, since we skipped the test, we're good to publish. But in our context, we're just going to share this app. So I'm going to go ahead and back out here. Coming back down to here, we've titled it Testing AI. We're going to come to these 3 ellipses, and all we need to do is press Share a Template. Once you have pressed Shared a Template, you'll come to a screen like this, essentially showing you the blocks. You can change the Zap title. You can change the description of the Zap you're sharing, but all we would need to do is press Share here, and then we're going to go ahead and get afforded that link. There we go. All I need to do is hit copy, and I'm good to go. You'll find that in the description below. So we are back at the IG to Pinterest Zap. Now I'm going to show you how to understand costs associated with every single AI run. So this Zap specifically has been run a couple of times. So you'll see that for the data out, when you press data out, essentially this shows you, the initial data in, and then essentially once the Zap runs, what was pushed forward. So in this context, this is what was pushed forward for this Zap. One thing you'll notice though is if you scroll down here, you'll get a token used amount, which is 6,459. Now in this context, for this one Zap, for this one run, this did not cost me 649 or 6,459 tokens. This is the amount used in the lifetime of this Zap, if that makes sense. Knowing this, and in order to understand how to use this, we're going to go ahead and just write down this number. So we're going to say 6,459 used tokens. We're going to come back over here. And as you see here, we have a ton of Zap runs. So let's go ahead and count how many are on a page. And we say this. So there are 10 on a page. Therefore, as we see down here, we have 6 pages. So we're going to say, in theory, this Zap has been run 60 times. So let's just go to our handy dandy Google calculator here. And if we type in 6,549 divided by 60, it's around 109 tokens used every time that flow executes. So now the next question you might be asking was, great, now I know the amount of tokens, but I mean, this is a pain. I don't want to do this every single time, and I don't want to essentially, go through this process every single time to get a calculation. Well, you're in luck. Here at Web Cafe AI, we built. All right, so we went ahead and put this in the description down below. Use this as your Zapier and OpenAI usage Excel sheet. So the idea behind this essentially is that once you know the certain parameters behind your usage, you're going to be able to calculate at scale how much it would cost every single run. So let me go ahead and clarify that a little. So in this context, we have a form entry response, a receive customer inquiry. So this is where you put your, example flow name, your objective, and now we'll get into the part where you would just need to input your information. So the first most important thing to input here would be the cost for 1,000 tokens and then the overall cost of your plan. So under the context that we're paying $58.50 a month for 1,500 tasks, it looks like every single time a task is run, it costs around 4 cents. And then on top of that, for the OpenAI tokens, we're assuming that it costs around 2 pennies every 1,000 tokens. In order to change that, we would just come over here. Okay, so since we're using GPT-4, we're going to increase it to 3 right here in order to encompass that every single token cost us around 0.0 or 0.0003 cents. And then from there, what we need to do essentially is input the information that we had from our flow. As we saw, the flow has 3 tasks used. So let's go ahead and make sure that's added. Okay, so in this context, the 3 tasks have been added. We call them zaps in this context. And then finally, we did the math for the usage, which came out to basically 109 tokens used per flow or per run. So I can go ahead and decrease this to 109. And then from here, for one run, it looks like it's going to cost us around 12 cents to run. Let's go ahead and find out if this were to run 100 times. All we need to do is come over here to this one, 0. There we go. For me to push an Instagram post, add a AI generated caption, and then put that over to Pinterest, if I ran that for 100 times, it would only cost me $12. This really shows you the power of AI automation. And what's even crazier is that this is $12 under the context that I'm on the Zap plan of $58.50. If I got a higher Zap plan and it actually cost me maybe 2 cents per Zap, as you see over here, 2 cents per task, it only cost me $6. So something to keep in mind. So that's it. You now understand how to create a Zapier account, create an OpenAI account, connect it to, and officially access the ability for AI automation. And I took it one step further, showing you essentially how to calculate the cost of every single AI automated flow in the context that you want to scale, and maybe you want to do 1,000 articles and so on. If you like this kind of content, make sure to check out the playlist at the end of this video, as it's a whole playlist when it comes to mastering ChatGPT and Zapier and really understanding AI automation in different specific unique contexts. We go over stuff like social media posting, article generation, and so on. You're going to learn a ton of stuff when it comes to prompt structuring, data manipulation, and AI automation as a whole, as we have been entering into a whole new business sphere in these last couple of months. If you're a business yourself and you just want to get AI automated integrated to your business as fast as possible, go ahead and check us out at WebCafe AI, as we are an AI automation service agency that deals with clients across industries and build out these flows for them. Lastly, if you want to get a higher education when it comes to this kind of workflow, make sure to check out our courses here at WebCafe AI. We go over a bunch of plethora of different topics, such as our business master course or our social media management course, and so on. But without further ado, make sure you check out that playlist at the end, as you're going to be able to get a bunch of different niche opportunity cases for AI automation. But lastly, and without further ado, I'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for tuning in. And yes, surprise, I'm an AI avatar. Make sure to explore more here at Web Cafe, where we demystify AI for your personal and business life. Until next time.